protocol?
It wouldn't be a violation of protocol, depending on the situation. You just step back, and that's what that report tries to do, is to step back and put you in the boots of those firefighters. And at that time, what they looked at before they dropped off, what we believe they looked at, again, we weren't standing there with them, we didn't get the interview, is that the fire was running into Yarnell on the east side. They may have felt that the wind shift had already occurred. And with that, they felt they could move to the Springs, Boulder Springs Ranch, a very good safety zone, and then reevaluate from there. Whether they stayed there, what they did after that, we don't know. But we feel that maybe based on the information they had and the decision process they made, is that the fire was slightly paralleling or slightly going away from them, that they felt safe to move to the ranch.
You don't think they would have done anything to put themselves in harm's way?
Absolutely not. They would have not done a race against time. They made that decision, we believe, and again, we didn't get to talk to them, is a safe route to that ranch.
At what point did the division supervisor and the captain of the hotshot crew reconnect, as best we know? I mean, it seems to be like they were in separate places. They obviously were together at the deployment site. When did they get back together, and where was the division supervisor in relationship to the crew in these critical moments leading up to the deployment?
Again, that's something we don't know. There's stuff we don't know in this one that may be different than any investigation in 80 years like this. Is we know that for at least a time they were separated. Whether they were walking together during that time of moving towards from the launch spot to that descent point to the deployment site, we don't know. We don't know if they were together or if one was ahead or behind the other. That information, in everything we gathered, that's still an unknown.
So going back to who may have made, under typical circumstances, who may have made the decision to leave the flag, in this situation, those people that day would have been Mr. Marsh and Mr. Steep, is that correct?
Normally it would have been one or two of them as a crew supervisor or a division suit. That would have been the normal process.
Jim.
Even the descent part. You know, our firefighters are trained as a whole to know they can turn down assignments, know they can say, hey, that's a safety consideration. So, you know, our thought process is the whole crew might have made that decision, division suit or the crew supervisor. We don't know, and we can't put something in there we don't know.
What role did concern for anguish of the surviving family members, concern about lawsuits, or concern about any type of criminal prosecutions? I don't know if that would apply in this case. What roles did those factors have in compiling this report?
Absolutely not. I'm from Florida, you know, and that's kind of what the state looked at as an outside person that could come in without any bias, without any thought on that. And our goal was put the best facts that we could put together and to help Arizona heal and help learn from this incident. And that's what we tried to do. No impact at all on lawsuits or anything like that.
Did you interview the family members at the Boulder Springs Ranch who were there at the time of the fire? And did they have any contact with Granite Mountain personnel earlier in the day or even very shortly before the deployment?
We interviewed the landowners of the Boulder Springs Ranch. Is that what you meant?
Yes, sir.
Yes, we did interview them. They did not know those firefighters were there until after they were discovered after the deployment. You know, they gave us a very good picture of what happened to them as that fire came in on them. But they did not know there was firefighters above or behind them up the canyon.
And there was no indication that the division supervisor was down there earlier in the day?
No indication, and we went through a lot of different evidence gathering, and we looked at security cameras that scanned the road. We looked at stuff like that, and none of it was there.
Again, will we get any kind of supplemental information that you guys used to put together your report, including your interviews with folks?
The entire case file has been given to the state.
In your report, what do you think can help firefighters, boots on the ground as you call it? What's the one thing that stands out in what you found that can help them the most?
Maybe in this situation, is communications intent. Meaning they were communicating, but they weren't always. You know, it was they were talking to each other, but they weren't understanding. And sometimes in our field, we keep that short because a lot of stuff is going on. And if you do a long conversation on the radio while other people are trying to get in and emergency stuff is happening, so you keep your communications very short. And what we feel happened here is some of that short communication was a process of missing what was going on. Granite Mountain was communicating what they were doing, and one of our other crews, through that short communication, assumed that they were going the opposite direction. They were on the same two-track road, and if you remember in the video, it says that. But one thought they were going north, and one thought they were going south, or one was communicating that they were going south.
Jim, Bob Richardson with NBC. We last met standing by the side of the highway north of Yarnell back in July. We're already hearing from a lot of family members that this does not answer a lot of their questions. What's your message to them?
I can't answer all the questions. We have a 30-minute time period that the crew didn't communicate, and the operations assumed that they were up in the black. And I think that process is the struggle of the report, and we don't have those people to talk to. We put this report together based on the best facts we have.
There's a culture among firefighters, wildland firefighters, to not point blame in accidents. Did you take that into account? Could you have pointed fingers and didn't?
I don't believe in this. I could have pointed a finger at any one person, crew, or resource. I try to step back and stand on that mountain where that crew was and try to figure out what they did and why and what decision was, without knowing exactly what that decision process was. But in some cases we see as they communicated that they were going to a safety zone, and they were moving to it, and crews do that routinely to ensure for their safety, and you routinely have to move through unburned fuels to get there. From the operations end, it was a very intense fire that had evacuations on the north end. Even the ICP out of the school had to prepare for evacuation, and then moved to the south end. So in everything we looked at, we felt the firefighters stayed within their boundaries, and the management made the best decisions they could make at the time they made
One
it.
last question. Doherty over there reported that the state of Arizona made requests to the regional fire incident command for a hotshot crew, and they were repeatedly denied. Did you find that to be true?
That was not. And I think we explained it in there, but I'll re-explain it. They ordered up 3 hotshot crews on the evening of the 29th of June. And what happened was ordered them from the Arizona Dispatch to SWCC, which is the Southwest Coordination Center. Southwest Coordination Center filled 2 of those with outside of the area crews, and those were Blue Ridge. One of them didn't make it to the fire because they had equipment problems in the process. Blue Ridge made it there. The other crew, which was Granite Mountain, they said, fill your 3rd crew with your local crew, and that's Granite Mountain through dispatch. They kicked it back, said fill it with that crew. So there was no turn down. It was a move back to the dispatch. That way, the regional dispatch knows the crews are assigned, and the local dispatch is filling that last order with their crew.
I'm not clear on something. You said that crews routinely cross through unburned fuel to get to a safety zone. Doesn't the safety guidelines for wildland firefighters say you should never cross through unburned fuels unless you have a lookout, and even then, be careful? And in this case, there was no lookout. Isn't that a big lesson to be learned here?
You're moving through, if you're moving an escape route to a safety zone, ideally, you have a lookout, but as you're moving, if you move through an escape route to a safety zone, chances are you don't have a lookout. Your people are moving. You're moving to that safety zone. ideal situations there you have a lookout, but most cases there, if you're moving down an escape route to a safety zone, you don't have a lookout because you are all moving to that safety zone.
But follow up, why would you, without a lookout, then move to a place where you couldn't even see the fire? That seems like a
And that's in the book, right? You don't go
wouldn't you-
somewhere where you can't see the fire.
Yeah, would that, if I'm not a firefighter, but if I were a firefighter, I would take a lesson that you tell me whether this is right or wrong and how, that I should not be moving during a fast-moving fire to a place where I can't see the fire.
And you got to step back to them and what they perceive. And we don't know exactly, other than, we feel that the weather event that was forecast had happened. We feel they felt that had happened. It was pushing the fire to Yarnell, which at the time would have been paralleling or maybe even slightly moving away from when they dropped into the canyon, most direct route to the ranch. We weren't able to talk to them to know exactly what decision process they had there.
Jim, on the south.
But the fire at that time, if the weather event had happened already, as they may have perceived, it would have been an appropriate move to relocate to that safety zone.
Without seeing the fire.
As you move an escape route to a safety zone, ideally you've got the fire in sight, but what you got to remember is this is a fluid process of moving through topography where sometimes you can see the fire, sometimes you don't. And if you're moving down an escape route to a safety zone, you may not always see that fire. If you fight fire in my country, you almost never can see it. It's flat ground. So
The Southwest Coordination Center initially said they only had one hotshot crew available for this fire on June 29th, and that was Blue Ridge. That was their initial reaction when the state asked them to deploy the crews. They said, we only have one, Blue Ridge.
No,
and then later in the afternoon, as the dispatch goes down, it starts to change later in the day. But the initial reaction was one crew, Blue Ridge. It's in the dispatch log.
They filled it, they actually, and you'll have to look in the report, they filled it with two crews outside of the local area. And those two crews, one of them broke down in process, so they had vehicle access issues. They never got there. The third crew, which was Granite Mountain, they kicked it back to Arizona Dispatch and said, fill this order with your local crew.
So Southwest kicked it back to Arizona, and Arizona made the dispatch.
No, they kicked it back saying, fill this with your local crew. They didn't kick it back as a turn down. They brought it back and said, fill this with your local crew.
But their initial response was Blue Ridge only.
No, absolutely not.
That's in the dispatch log. It's very
No.
clear.
Why,
Now, take a look at it.
Okay.
why have an event like this on a Saturday?
I didn't schedule this.
Well, who did? I mean, what was the reasoning? Surely you know why it is.
Well, we had to talk to the families. And Monday to Friday, everybody works. And that would be my assumption that the families were first in this thing. I'm sorry I'm saying that to you, but the families were first.
Jim, can I just be clear? So you're saying
So
that, to be clear, you're saying wildland firefighters routinely disregard those safety standards of the Red Book by going into unburnt fuel without a lookout. That's what you said, they routinely do it. If that's the case, what's the purpose of the handbook?
the 10 and the 18, their guidelines, knowing that, remember this as a firefighter, go by these guidelines, knowing it's fluid, knowing that in every condition you have to make decisions. You use those guidelines and you make the best decision you have at the time. If it was an absolute, I mean, it'd be tough. It'd be tough on that end. These are guidelines. It's just like and they were adopted from the military guidelines for combat many years ago. And those are absolutely guidelines that every situation changes, and you have to evolve, and you have to, as a firefighter, use your training and use those guidelines to help you make the best decision possible.
But if it's routine that those guidelines are broken,
Now,
should the
I didn't
guidelines
say
be
it's
changed?
routine. I said, when I said it was moving through an escape route.
Tell me
to a
what you meant by
safety
that.
zone.
When you said routine, tell me what you meant.
I said it's routine to move through escape routes to safety zones.
Through
And
unburned fuel?
Unburned fuel.
Without seeing the fire?
Many times, if you're trying to go to a safety zone, if it's a condition you have, you're going to move through unburned fuels. I mean, most of the time, you're not going to get the luxury of being in the black. Sometimes, if you do, that's a good opportunity. Moving through unburned fuels to a safety zone is not that uncommon. Ticket is advising that.